4:35. Would you be able to spot someone impersonating a government worker? Kristen Allen is at the First Alert Safety Desk. Kristen, what does everybody need to know about these particular scams?
Tammy, these scammers can be tricky because they often try to intimidate you and take advantage of any fear that you may have. They can do that by threatening legal action. Scammers frequently pretend to be Social Security or other government employees and claim there's a problem with your Social Security number or any benefits you may have. They could even claim your Social Security number is linked to a crime. If you suspect that you've been contacted by a scammer, hang up and ignore the message if you do get a text or a voicemail. It's similar to other scams where you should never send personal information, money or gift cards. Government workers will never try to threaten you with legal action for not agreeing to pay a certain amount of money, promise a benefit in exchange for money, or ask you to send gift cards, prepaid debit cards, or really any kind of money through the U.S. mail. Scammers are always evolving and looking for new ways to try to steal your money and personal information, so it's important to stay vigilant. You can report scams to the Office of the Inspector General. We have a link on our website, WBAY.com.